Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Dani Mantilla y estamos aquí en Kinótico, en un espacio posible gracias al apoyo de ICEX España Exportación e Inversiones y financiado por Unión Europea, Next Generation, Plan de Recuperación, Gobierno de España. En este set estamos entrevistando a talento nacional e internacional en colaboración con Fred Film Radio y hoy tenemos con nosotros a Edward Berger, el director de Cónclave, que compite por la Concha de Oro y también de una película ganadora de 4 Oscars como Sin novedad en el frente. Hello, Edward.
Hello.
This is your first time in San Sebastian. What
It
has been
is.
your first contact?
First contact was last night, arriving at the hotel and opening the window and having the breathe of the sea and the smell
That's
of
cool.
the sea, and that was wonderful.
Are you nervous about this screening? Because I think the audience is quite different from the States and Europe, because our relationship with faith, with religion, is different.
Yes, I mean it is. I mean, America. I would say it's a much more atheist or cultural, culture. There's many people of different beliefs, and obviously, especially Southern Europe, is very Catholic. So I'm very much looking forward to how the film plays here.
People were really eager to see what you were going to do after All Quiet on the Western Front. I know that you were working in both things at the same time, but why the following film? Like, there were a lot of expectations. Sorry.
Well, the good thing is that I made up my mind of what to do before All Quiet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I basically shot this movie while I was promoting All Quiet, and none of the Oscars had happened. None of it had happened. And then when I realized that All Quiet was in this Oscar situation, I was very glad that I'd already made up my mind and I was already making a movie, because for me, there was no pressure, because I'd already made up my mind. The next movie was clear.
What was the thing that appealed you about the book of Robert Harris?
I really like being taken in a thriller genre. It's really, the movie is sort of a thriller with many twists and turns that changes its pace all the time, and being taken inside an environment that I know very little about, and very few people know very little about, inside the closed doors of the conclave, how the most powerful person on earth is voted for. And it felt to me that is a great setting for a political thriller, for how people succumb to ambition, how they suddenly want to be the most powerful person in the world. But also there's a second layer to the movie, and that which is following Ralph Fiennes' character and his journey of doubt.
Yep.
He has a strong sense of doubt of whether he's the right person to run this conclave, whether he's in the right position, whether he should be doing something else. And that's something I think a lot of us can relate to.
I wanted to ask you about that, because do you think doubt is good for a filmmaker?
I have it all the time, so I don't know if it's good, but I'm driven by doubt. I constantly ask myself, from details like, is the camera in the right position? But much bigger, like, what do I want to say? Why am I making movies? Why am I making this movie? It's a constant process of questioning yourself, being unsure, because also you never know how a movie is going to play. You don't know when you make a movie. All you can think is, this is how I would see it. Let me make it like this. And then you show it, and you don't know how the audience will react. And that's the true miracle of movie making. On the day of the premiere, if the movie works or not. So that process inherently for me has to be sort of, hand in hand with doubt, of questioning it.
You were saying that you know it in the moment of the premiere. I wanted to ask you, when did you realize how big the phenomenon with All Quiet in the Western Front was, really? Because there were like a little bit of signs with the BAFTA shortlist, the Oscar shortlist. When did you realize that the film had touched a nerve?
Well, All Quiet, first of all, it really, I don't know if I ever realized, or if I still don't realize it really. I don't think of it that way, but I think of it as a movie that I had a real reason to make. I really wanted to tell a story, and I really wanted to tell a story from a perspective and from a side that I don't think has been seen that many times. And so I think it felt like, from screening to screening, it was actually very healthy with All Quiet. We started the movie in Toronto. It was a quiet premiere, kind of under the radar, because there were much bigger movies to the left and right. There's Steven Spielberg showing a movie on the left and Harry Styles showing a movie on the right. Which movie do you think they're going to go to? Mine? No, they're going to see their movie. And those movies have a much bigger premiere. And so from festival to festival, from screening to screening, you felt All Quiet gaining a momentum, sort of a sense of getting more and more fans and people more and more liking, and so it was a really wonderful experience to see that movie grow naturally.
What was the biggest challenge with Conclave? Maybe shooting like in one set, basically, doing your first movie in English because you had done television, but I think not a feature. What was the the most challenging?
I never think of English or German or somehow that feels like language is the same to me, and you get it, you get the feeling. I would love to make a movie in Spanish, because you still get the sense of the emotion, and it's not so important if you understand every word or so, but obviously I'm much more comfortable in English than in Spanish or any other language, but so I never worried about that. It was more, let's say, you pointed at it, the confinement of the it's good that if it feels like one location, but we had many locations. It's like a big puzzle piece creating one big location, but through very small many others. And so I was I worked through that and try to make that feel coherent, but also I think the biggest challenge was trusting, to keep the trust in the script, because usually my movies have very little dialogue. Like All Quiet has very little dialogue, and this movie is driven by dialogue. And I remember reading the script for the first time and thinking about it and being fascinated by the words. But then you keep shooting it, and it takes months and months, and you keep shooting the words, and at some point you think like, is this enough? So that was a big challenge to keep trusting those words.
Lawrence was an Italian character in the book. Why did you decide to change it? It was a star system thing, maybe?
It was casting. It's basically which actor in the world is the best to play this role, and for me that was Rafe. And then I don't believe in Rafe playing an Italian man. He's just English, and he should play an Englishman. So we changed that role too. If it had been a Spanish actor or a Portuguese actor, or the character would be Portuguese. That adaptation, or a Mexican character, or wherever that person is from, I wanted to have that true nationality.
What did it feel to direct Rossellini, Lithgow, Tucci, Fiennes?
Well, it's obviously a great gift to get the enthusiasm of these actors to play these roles, and it was important that they all feel very different. That they're all, Tucci is very different from Fiennes, and Lithgow they all played such different roles. And Castellito is an Italian actor who's the opposite of Ray Fiennes, and then to have a woman at the heart of it, because she plays a big role in the sort of at the core of the movie, and who has again very little lines and needed to be present without saying much, and that felt like Isabella is such an excellent addition to round out the cast.
And she has like an amazing scene that in my screen people applauded. So
oh, great!
Yes,
really?
yes. And
Fantastic.
it was a small screen because it was before the festival, but yeah, people reacted to that moment. I wanted to ask you. We're not going to disclose it because it's quite powerful, and people were talking about before the release of the film. The ending is going to give a lot to talk about. Did you ever consider to change that, or that was something that had to be in Conclave?
Well, the film is based on a book, and this ending is sort of, not really, but sort of like this in the book. And to change that ending, you really have to have a strong reason to change it. And for me, it worked and was interesting because also the movie is about the power dynamics in the oldest patriarchy in the world, in the Catholic Church. There's literally no women in that organization. And to somehow burst that open with a movie and say the future might be different was interesting to me.
I wanted to ask you about the score, the music by Volker Bertelmann. Have I said it right?
Perfect.
Okay, because it's like a very important aspect of the film. It helps you to stay like tense all the time.
Oh, good. If it then
How
it
was
works, I guess.
designing that with him?
We looked for a long time. We did also the score for All Quiet
Hmm.
together,
Yeah,
and that was
he
much
won the
quicker.
Oscar.
Yeah, he won the Oscar. It was wonderful. That was a much quicker process. We somehow found it right away. With this movie, it was a much longer journey, and the music is so important to determine the tone. And eventually, we finally, just like 3 weeks before I finished the edit, we finally found like a few core pieces, and that just fell into place for me. It's a mixture between tension, between keeping the audience alert, between surprising them, and between, I always like if there's a dichotomy between sound and image, if there's some kind of dialogue, and the music sometimes just goes against the
Hmm.
images, just sort of again bursts it open and surprises you,
And what about
attacks you in a
yeah,
way.
yeah? What about the tone? Because it's a film that could have been told in many ways, like more serious, more distant. But I think you guys want to have fun in a way. Also, how was setting the right tone for this story?
It also took a while. It's the editing, you need to, you can influence the movie in different ways, and just felt, to have such a somber, theoretically somber subject matter like Catholics and
Hmm.
election could be very dry, and just to make it interesting and consumable for an audience. And I'm making this movie
Hmm.
for the audience to go see it. It's difficult out there. People don't go to the cinemas, and
Yeah.
we want them to go to the cinemas. And part of the cinema is it's a show. The curtain opens, and we take them into a world where it's different. And so to have it be entertaining is not the worst thing in the world.
It gave me a 90s vibe in a good way because it's a kind of cinema that it's not done anymore within the studio system at least, and I love that throwback. I
Oh,
have to
great.
say, yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Are
Well,
you
that's why
ready?
I grew up with
Yeah,
90s films.
yeah. Are you ready for another Oscar season? Because the film appears in a lot of trades, predictions.
Well, those are predictions. It's a long road.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. Let the audience discover the film. Let the movie be successful at the box office. That's the main thing right now, to look at the next step. And I just want people to go see it, and all the distributors who helped us make the movie, be proud and be also thankful that they get their money back, and that and especially have audiences enjoy it. And then whatever comes after that, we'll see. It's like a step later in the fall, maybe.
And what did you learn of your previous experience? Because I think it has to be wild for an European filmmaker.
What did I learn from
From
from the Oscar season?
yeah.
Um, well, you know what? Interestingly enough, I couldn't really think about it that much
Mhm.
because I was shooting Conclave at the
Okay.
time. I was literally shooting Conclave till March 10th of 2023, and on March 13th we had the Oscars. So I sometimes flew back and forth from Rome to Los Angeles to promote the movie for the weekend,
Mhm.
and then flew back to Rome to continue shooting on Monday morning. So I didn't have much time to think about it, but it's obviously a very exciting world. I remember, I can tell you a little anecdote. I was at a dinner just before the Oscars,
Mhm.
invited to sort of a director's dinner. And to my left was Ruben Östlund, and to my right was Steven Spielberg.
Not bad.
Two directors that that are obviously masters of what they do and that I admire very much. And it was maybe 10 directors around the table, and we had a wonderful conversation, and everyone shared why they made their movie. And so at the end of the dinner, we all got up and we said goodbye and we walked away. And then I said quickly to Steven Spielberg, I said, "Oh, I forgot something." And I went back and stole the name tag, mine, his, and Ruben Östlund's,
Oh, that's cool.
just to remember that I was sitting there. And so that is something very thrilling that you
Mhm.
suddenly sit there.
I'm not going to ask you about Ocean's 14, Bond, but how does it feel like to be wanted by Hollywood? All those meetings.
I don't know if I feel wanted or so. It's like it's always, it's always. I mean, it's always. In the end, you have to make the movie that you feel really passionate about because it's a long time in your life. It'll always be part of my life. Conclave will be part of my life until I die. So I want to be proud of it, and that's the main thing. To see what life brings and what the next movie is, and which one I'm going to choose very much will depend on the script and whoever wants me. And the good thing is I already shot another movie, so I'm kind of relaxed too. I have another movie made. So,
Which one?
It's called Ballad of a Small Player. I just made it in Macau in China.
Oh, cool.
With Colin Farrell and Tilda Swinton. It's going to come out next fall, and hopefully I'll be back in San Sebastian.
Oh, I hope so. And I wanted to ask you about the German cinema, because I feel that we don't get to see so many films from Germany, but you guys have like a good track record outside of the country. I'm thinking Teacher's Lounge, your film. Why do you feel that is? Because it's the same thing with Denmark. It's a small country in that case, but they travel a lot.
It is a real problem, and I find it deplorable that Germany concentrates so much on themselves. I think the big problem is it's a fairly strong market. It is Switzerland, Austria, Germany. They all speak one language. I mean, you could say the same thing of Spanish, right? It's a very big market, But but Spanish is the good thing. It's so international. Germany is tiny. Germany is a small country in a big world, but the market is big enough that that people seem to be content just to produce for Germany, and it almost doesn't need to travel. Danish movies need to travel because it's so small. You need to be able to reach a global audience, and they do that beautifully. Any country around Germany, Belgium, even Holland, Poland, seem to be making more international films than Germany. And so I think we really, and the other thing is the system, the funding system is very, very antiquated, and we're not funding visionaries. We're funding commercial filmmakers that succeed at the box office. And I'm not sure if a visionary like Pedro Almodovar would have a breakthrough in Germany today, because he would be marginalized. You'd go like, oh, this is an odd movie. And so I think that to be open like that needs to arrive in German filmmaking, in the community and in the politics of it.
It's funny because the director for Teacher's Lounge told me something like that it was a big country, but it was like to focus on commercial cinema.
Yeah.
Yep. One last question. I could do a bit more, but do you think? How do you think the Vatican is going to respond to this film, to Conclave?
I think they're just going to be silent, and they're all going to watch the movie. I'm 100% sure. Every cardinal that I met said to me, "Oh, we're going to watch your film,"
and we're going to comment it in private.
But they're not going to. They're probably going to gossip amongst each other. Say, "Did you see that? That was terrible," or "I liked it," or whatever they're going to say. But they're not going to say anything in public. So I think it's going to be fine.
And it's just also funny that the film is going to open at the same time that we're living an American election. Do you think it's going to affect the film in a way? Maybe the way it's discussed.
I mean, obviously we didn't plan it, It's like it just happens to be at the same time, because we developed this movie for years and years and years. You can never know when it's done. So now it's sort of a coincidence that it's in time with the election. But anyway, the movie is a more universal or global story. It could take place in politics. It could take place in the church. Could take place in a big internet company or wherever it is. It happens all the time that people want the top job, and they're going to be ruthless to their neighbor to cut them down.
Our friends from filming would like to know, who are you thankful for in your relationship with cinema? Maybe a filmmaker, a film, an actor, and why?
That's a great question. I keep changing it. I keep changing the answer if I ever have one definitive, and it's always very much dependent on my daily state of mind. But I would say Francis Ford Coppola is the one that inspired me most, because I saw Apocalypse Now when I was 18 or 19. I was living in Paris. I was working there, selling T-shirts at rock concerts. I lived above a cinema. And I found out that there's a cinema, because it was very small, because I kept hearing the Once Upon a Time in the West soundtrack. So I went downstairs and then said Apocalypse Now next week, and I went to go see it, and I hadn't seen it, and it really blew my mind, because it was a different type of movie. It was surreal. It wasn't a real story. It was sort of more focused on, or more the idea of it was much more poetic than a plot. It wasn't driven by plot. It was more driven by poetry and surrealism, and I actually left the movie and I hadn't understood it. And that's what I loved, and I wanted to go back to try to understand it. And the beauty of the movie is actually, it's not graspable. It's too big to be understood. And that is something, and also he's a courageous person who just makes whatever he wants to make, and it's a real, trailblazer.
Have you seen Megalopolis?
I haven't seen it yet.
It's going to be shown here in San Sebastian in a few days.
I'll go see it.
If you're here,
I'll go see
watch
it. I met him in Toronto, and
cool.
and I just asked him a couple of questions, and I thought that was a really nice meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And good luck today with the premiere.
Thank you.
Ya sabéis que podéis ver Cónclave estos días en San Sebastián, en diciembre en los cines españoles, y seguimos aquí con más entrevistas en kinótico.es, la primera con K, la segunda con C.